Hello, welcome to the Lions Awaken show. Welcome to our final episode of our Caesar and God series, where we are going to be talking about the separation of church and state and what that actually means. And remember, if you like this video, please share, like, and subscribe. So Caleb, why is it important to talk about this issue of separation of church and state?
Well, politics and government have become so corrupt and so dirty because of the lack of influence the church has been in it, and the lack of, I guess, God-fearing Christians actually in government and politics. We've just, I don't know why, but we've completely avoided that area for a long time, and that has created a vacuum for secular people to go in there. And the more secular your government, the less, I guess, Christian it becomes. That's obvious, right?
Yep.
And so, this is all based on that lie and that misunderstood interpretation of that Thomas Jefferson letter, of him basically sending that letter to the church talking about the separation of church and state. And so people use that to justify, oh yeah, that's why Christians or, the church shouldn't be involved in government, because there's a separation there. There's a separation between the church and the state, and they're two separate entities, which is not wrong, but they misunderstand that doesn't mean the church can't influence still morally the government. And yeah, we'll get into like the actual meaning of that letter, but it's all twisted. Right. And so they just use that as an excuse to keep Christians out of politics and to keep church influence out of government policies, really. Right. So.
Because every government has a religion that it is based on.
That's right. Every person has a worldview
Yeah.
where they implement that worldview into their actions, into everyday life, including government policy. So remove Christian values, and just another set of values
you're gonna have
is going to be
atheistic
in there.
values, which is a religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to talk about this.
Sounds like it's very important to talk about, which is good. I think a lot of people have no idea the history behind this phrase or anything.
I think you're right. A lot of Christians don't, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly. They, like you said, they believe one lie that comes from this phrase is that the church needs to stay out of the state, which you said Christians shouldn't get involved in politics. And another lie that people believe from this phrase is that they think it gives the government the right to say you can't pray or bring a Bible to public schools or have 10 commandments on displays in courtrooms or even have religious symbols on city seals. Like, they have taken all this stuff away by saying, well, it needs to be separation of church and state, so you can't have any Christianity in government stuff. And that's not at all what this thing means.
That's right. They've taken away all that stuff because they've taken away the context of what that separation of church and state actually means.
Right. But the enemy is going to use whatever he can to take Christianity out, and it's because the Christians don't know the context of it. They don't know how to fight against it.
That's right.
But let's just take their logic and say, oh, we can't be in the state, right? This means that Christians shouldn't be in politics. Well, if there's supposed to be a wall there, then that means the state can't come in the church tell us what to do, or even tell us that we can or can't have church.
Yep.
And we saw that happen this last year during the whole pandemic thing.
That's right.
And Christians were just like, oh, okay, well, I guess I can't have church.
Yeah.
But if there's supposed to be a wall there,
that means the church or the government can't get involved with the church.
Exactly.
So it goes both ways.
It goes both ways. So let's kind of dive into what the separation of church and state even means, and educate our listeners and watchers. Because this is very fascinating to me, too, the whole history. There's a long history behind it. But you can even look in the Old Testament where God placed Moses over the civil affairs, and then he placed Aaron over the spiritual ones. So right there, God had he orchestrated his first form of government was a separation of church and state.
That's right.
Where Aaron was over the church affairs, Moses over the civil affairs, and they went hand in hand. And I love the story of Uzziah in 2 Chronicles 26, which is another example of separation of church and state. Uzziah was the king of Judah. He got very famous because he was very powerful, probably one of the most powerful kings during his time. But when he became very strong, he became proud, and he entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar. And then I'm just going to quote here what happened in 2 Chronicles 26, 17, and 18, where Azariah the priest entered after him, Uzziah, and with him 80 priests of the Lord, valiant men. They opposed Uzziah the king and said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Get out of the sanctuary, for you have been unfaithful and will have no honor from the Lord God." And then right after that, God struck Uzziah with leprosy, and he was a leper the rest of his life.
Wow.
So right there, you can see God set a precedent. Look, you're the king, but it is not your job to take care of the church stuff. That's kind of the first examples of the whole separation of church and state. And then there's this article in the Founders Bible, one of my favorite books. If you haven't gotten it, you should definitely get the Founders Bible. It's amazing. And in it, it has a whole, like I said, commentary about what is the separation of church and state. And it goes into the history of it, and it talks about John Wise, he was a reverend. He was one of the 6 greatest intellectual forces that influenced the founding era. And when he wrote about this subject, he identified 3 distinct periods regarding the separation of church and state. And the first period was the first 3 centuries of Christianity that immediately followed Christ. And according to Wise, this was the most refined and purest time, and where the church and state recognized their separate jurisdictions and honored their separate roles. And he described this as the period of purity. And the second period he talks about was when it's like spans the next 12 centuries and was a time when the state took control of the church, merging the 2 separate institutions into one. And this he called the period of apostasy, because this is when a lot of really bad things happened, where the Christians, or where the state persecuted Christians, or Christians killed other religions.
Yeah, that didn't line up with their doctrine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of evil things that happened because they controlled everything. The third period was what Wise called the period of Reformation, and that's where John Wycliffe, you had Martin Luther, and other reformers that started understanding the Bible and saying, "Hey, what you're doing here is not right. You can't tell us, you don't have authority over our faith. God instituted government for civil duties, and we as Christians have the right to exercise our faith according to how we want to." And Martin Luther, here's a quote from him during this time, where he said, quote, "The temporal government, the state, has laws which extend no further than to life and property and external affairs on earth. For God cannot and will not permit anyone but himself to rule over the soul. Therefore, where the temporal authority, the state, presumes to prescribe laws for the soul, it encroaches upon God's government and only misleads souls and destroys them." Unquote.
That's good.
Yeah, he knew what he was talking about, man. The authority, the state has no authority over our soul.
That's right. And that kind of goes back to the submitting to government as well, with Romans 13.
Mm-hmm.
When the government breaks God's moral laws, which is that's part of that.
Yep.
Then their submission becomes invalid. Submitting to them. So
yeah, that's exactly what he's saying.
And that's why he rebelled.
Yep. And another reformer, John Calvin, has another great quote where he says, quote, the church has no power of the sword to punish or to coerce, no authority to compel, no prisons, fines, or other punishments like those inflicted by the civil magistrate. The difference, therefore, is very great, because the church does not assume to itself what belongs to the magistrate, nor can the magistrate execute that which is executed by the church. Unquote.
That's good.
So he's just
That sums it all up.
Yeah.
We can end this podcast
That's
right
right. All right,
All
we're
right.
done. We'll see you next time. Just kidding. This is basically summing up the whole series. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been talking about this whole thing, and the whole series about this whole, how does church and government go hand
That's right.
in hand?
The role of each one.
Yeah, they're both very important, but yeah. All right.
But
So
they have their differences.
yes, they do.
Yeah.
So now, and these people throughout history use the phrase separation of church and state.
Mm-hmm.
And so Thomas Jefferson was not the first person to talk about that.
Yeah. But that's the thing. They're talking about the entities, not the people.
Mm-hmm.
They're not saying Christians need to stay in the church, and then I guess non-Christians, operate in government. They're not saying, these people are not saying separate Christians out of government.
Right.
They're saying separate the role of the church and the role of government. Keep them separate. Don't intermingle them.
Right.
But the people, Christians, need to be in both.
Yep.
That's where we get it wrong, is that we think that Christians should just stay out, where it's like, no, Christians need to be in both.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have like God-fearing Christians in both, and then you won't have dirty, corrupt politics and government. You'll have good, clean, honest government politics.
Exactly. Very well said.
Anyway.
Because all these people, the reformers, they were in politics.
Yeah,
they affected the laws of their time.
exactly.
They changed the laws of their time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for them.
Yeah.
So let's get down to Thomas Jefferson's letter and why he wrote it, who he wrote it to. He wrote it to the Danbury Baptist Association when they wrote to him, because they expressed their grave concern that the government might someday try to regulate their religious beliefs or expressions, and they believe that the government should not interfere with any public religious expression unless it works ill to his neighbor. And Thomas Jefferson responded to them with a letter on January 1st, 1802. And this is what he responded to their concern. Quote, "That religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legislative powers of government reach actions only and not opinions.
Oof.
I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, the First Amendment, thus building a wall of separation between church and state." Unquote.
That's good.
So that gives you the whole context.
Right there.
He's literally assuring the Baptists that there's a wall between church and state. That means you have full right to exercise your religion. We can't do anything about that.
That's right.
We're here to protect you.
It wasn't the state that was worried about the church basically influencing them. It was the church worried about the state influencing them.
Yes,
In
which
this
is
whole context.
Exactly. Which is why the First Amendment is directed at the state, not the church, because they understood history where every time state got big, they tried to overtake the church and have authority over both and to control it so that they can control the population and say, hey, if you don't do this and you don't believe this, we're going to execute you.
Yeah.
Which is why the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. It says Congress shall make no law or prohibiting the free exercise.
Boom.
So Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So it's putting a restraint on the state, saying you can't do anything to restrict religion or the free exercise thereof.
Yeah.
But you look at what this country has done by taking prayer and Bibles out of schools, which is making a law against the free exercise thereof. So they've totally ignored, this country's totally ignored the First Amendment, which is the law of the land, and just focused on this phrase of separation of church and state, which isn't anywhere in the Constitution.
Yeah.
So even if, let's say the separation of church and state means what they think it is, you still can't make laws based off of that and ignore the law of the land.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's one more quote that I really love. That's from an early Methodist bishop named Charles Galloway, where he said, quote, "The separation of the church from the state did not mean the severance of the state from God or of the nation from Christianity," unquote.
That's good.
He understood.
We should just say just quotes throughout the whole thing, because this is so, like, all these people knew. They knew. But they understood history. That's why we're in this predicament right now, is because a lot of people in our time, in our day and age, don't understand history. And so they're susceptible to lies and misunderstanding. So that's why we're doing this podcast.
That's right.
So here we go.
People that don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
That's right. Yep.
So
if we transition now, you said a beautiful quotes from people in history, American founding fathers, and so forth. If we transition to Bible characters, people in the Bible, what did they think about all this stuff? Was there separation going on between their faith and the world, I guess, or government or politics? Heck to the no. Let's start with the Old Testament, though. Every person I'm about to say, each one of these people, they brought their faith and they implemented their faith in everything they did, especially in politics and government. They didn't separate the two. They kept them in there, but they also respected the roles they each of them played.
Most of the famous Bible characters in the Old Testament were in politics.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we're in politics, we're government. Yeah, look at Abraham with Melchizedek, and even Abraham was basically a warlord at the time. Really, kind of was.
He had an army.
Yeah, that's right. Joseph, although he was forced into it at first, he became the second in command of the biggest empire at the time, Egypt.
Yeah. I
mean, Moses.
He was the second most powerful man on earth.
That's right, yeah. And he didn't just stop believing in God and was like, I can't be, a Jew anymore. I can't practice my faith anymore because I'm in government now. So, no, of course not. And then Moses, as well, he basically created our modern form of government.
Well, God did, but he implemented it. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, semantics. And then Samuel. Look at Samuel. I want to kind of expand on Samuel's role. He was the prophet during the days of Saul, King Saul, and he was basically Saul's moral compass in a way. He let Saul know what to do and what not to do based on what God told Samuel to tell Saul. And Samuel also confronted Saul when he disobeyed God, whenever he deviated. Saul represents the government.
Yep.
Samuel represents the church. We, the church, need to do that with our government. We need to constantly remind government of God's moral laws and what is in a Christian nation, especially in a Christian nation or in a godly nation. And we need to also confront government whenever they disobey those laws, whenever they disobey God's moral laws. We need to confront them when they break them.
Amen.
We're not doing
Where
that.
did that
we
church
need to do
go
that.
to?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Where did that bold and courageous church go?
Where's the fear of the Lord within government
For real.
and within church?
For real.
That's another series. But anyway. But seriously, we need that.
Yeah.
Look at King David. I mean, it's in the name, King David.
King David.
He
was he a king?
He was a king. He was a
Wow.
psalmist. He loved God. He did not, take away his religious practice or whatever away. Like he had both of them. He had his faith and his role in government together. They were together.
He was a godly king.
He was a godly king. Boom, that's it. Godly king. Solomon, same thing. Elijah, he confronted Jezebel, Ahab, all those priests of Baal.
He represents the church.
He also represents the church. But he didn't hide. He didn't say, oh, you know what? That's the government. I got to stay out of that. No, he actually ran towards it.
God called him to confront the government of his day.
Yep. Jonah, another person God called to confront government.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel's just a beautiful example. Also another man who was in government. Who was a godly man.
He was in government. He defied bad government.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a righteous Christian man.
Yeah. Well, not Christian at the time, but
well, it's true.
But he kind of was. If you look at the New Testament, John the Baptist, he confronted Herod.
Yeah.
He went in there. He didn't say, you know what? Oh, shoot. That's government. We'll just let them be. No. Jesus, same person, confronted the religious people at his time that were the government authorities. We touched on this in previous episodes. Paul, same thing. The centurion that got saved. Was he like, oh, shoot, now that I'm a Christian, I can't be a centurion anymore?
I better drop my weapons.
No, he remained a centurion, but he was still a Christian. He still implemented his faith and worldview.
He actually turned out probably to be a better centurion that he gave his life to the Lord because he could lead righteously.
That's right. Boom. So again, each and every one of these people, they brought their faith and implemented it in everything they did.
Yeah.
Especially in government and politics, because that is the most important mountain because it affects every other mountain of influence.
Believe it or not,
it literally affects every other mountain.
Because of our government and politics and laws in our land is the reason we can sit here and talk about Jesus, and is the reason you can sit there or stand, whatever you're doing, and watch this video without the government coming and spying on you, which they are sometimes through their phones anyway,
yeah.
but telling you can't listen to the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
It affects everything, just like you said. Carry on.
That's right. Well, that's all I got right there.
I mean, William Wilberforce is a prime example.
Another good
He
one.
got saved,
Mm-hmm.
and he thought, hey, I want to be a pastor. I'm just going to have to do Christian duties now and stuff. Because there's a movie, I think, called Amazing Grace about
Great
him.
movie. Yep.
Really good movie. But then he realized, no, God called him to end slavery through government.
Yep.
I mean, what an amazing calling.
That's right.
God used him to be in government. So we are called to operate in more than just one mountain.
That's right. Not all Christians. If you're a Christian out there and you have a passion for politics, don't listen to any pastor or other Christian that tells you you need to go into the church, you need to become a missionary or a pastor or a youth pastor or a preacher. No, if that's not what God has called you to be, it's okay to follow what God has called you to be if it's outside the church.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally fine. Be spirit-led, not man-led. Okay? No matter who it is. Even if it's another Christian telling you, you gotta, what I just said, become a missionary, pastor, or preacher. If that's not what's on your heart, if that's not what God has called you to be, then you're actually disobeying God.
Yep.
Even if your intentions or your motives are right, don't disobey God. Follow your heart, follow your dreams, follow your passions, and follow the purpose God has placed inside of you.
Amen. Preach it. In conclusion,
Yeah.
separation of church and state has absolutely nothing to do with Christian state on politics.
That's right.
That's basically the conclusion of that.
Yep.
And it does not mean that government has the right to keep Christianity out of government. It actually means the opposite. It's supposed to protect our rights to express Christianity.
I just had a thought. We should create theological schools that pump out politicians instead of just straight up pastors or preachers.
It's kind of what Morningstar's doing. In a way.
That's true. Yeah, Morningstar, they pump out people and all to reach every mountain,
Mm-hmm.
every influence.
Yeah.
We need more Morningstars.
Sign up for Morningstar School of Leadership.
Yep, that's right. So yeah, politics, government, it affects everything physical and legal. The church affects everything spiritual and moral. When the two work hand in hand, you know what you get, Matthew Detweiler? You get a godly society, a godly culture, a godly nation.
Boom.
And that's what we need.
And in Proverbs, there's a scripture that says, when the godly rule the land, the people are glad.
Let's be glad.
So that's just a paraphrase.
Yeah.
But that quote, what you said about politics affect everything, two work hand in hand to get a godly society, that kind of sums up this whole series.
Yep. So yeah, I think we're landing this plane. Do you want to promote us?
All right. So that's the end of this wonderful Caesar and God series.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that you have a better understanding of the role of government, the role of church, when to submit and when not to submit to government, and what the phrase separation of church and state actually means, so that you can stand up
That's right.
for your values and stand up for the truth, what the truth actually is, because we're all about truth here.
Mm-hmm.
We're all about truth.
That's right. We're all about speaking the truth. But I hope it was, like, Matt and I really wanted to make this as simple as possible. And a lot of what we're saying is generalized and very simple, because we don't want to go too deep or, make it complicated.
Right.
This is just a general overview, a simple explanation of everything that you just said. So we're going to come out next, hopefully pretty soon, with another series on life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
I can't wait for that one.
That's going to be awesome. So stay tuned, stay connected, and keep roaring the truth.
That's right. Any kind of feedback is greatly appreciated. You can email us at info@linesawaken.org. Again, that's info@linesawaken.org. You can comment on our YouTube page where our videos are. You can comment on our Facebook page, our Instagram page. You can, if you're not watching this on the website, you can go to our website, scroll to the bottom, and put in your name and your email, and all our latest podcasts and articles will come straight to your email. And if you sign up, you'll be one of the first people to know when our merchandise is launched. That's in the process right now. Lines Awaken merch.
Let's go.
I'm excited for that.
It's going to be sick.
So, again, thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. And until next time, God bless you. And keep rolling the truth.